You know, in our digital lives, we're all basically sitting on a treasure trove of personal data. But how do we actually protect it? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into how to build the digital fortress that keeps that treasure safe. Let's get right into it. I want to start with just a number, $4.35 million. Just let that sit there for a second. What do you think that number represents in the world of cybersecurity? That number? It's the global average cost of a single data breach. Yeah, this isn't some hypothetical risk. It's a multi-million-dollar reality for businesses every single day. The stakes? Well, they really couldn't be any higher. So that staggering cost tells us one thing loud and clear. In this digital age, data is basically the new gold. And like any treasure, it attracts thieves. So our first step has to be understanding exactly what it is we're protecting and who we're protecting it from. And look, this responsibility, it's on all of us. On a personal level, we have to guard our own identities. For companies, employees are responsible for protecting the organization's reputation and all that customer data. And for a country, it's about national security. Everyone has something incredibly valuable to protect. Here's another number for you to think about: 280 days. That is the average amount of time it takes an organization just to identify that a breach has even happened. I mean, imagine that. For over 9 months, an intruder could be silently poking around a network, completely undetected. Okay, so this brings us to the thieves themselves, right? A cyber threat isn't some static monster just lurking in the shadows. No way. It's a constantly evolving adversary. The digital battlefield is always changing. And wow, this timeline, it just maps out that evolution perfectly. If you look way back to 2004, we were dealing with pretty simple worms and viruses. But fast forward to today, and we're up against coordinated ransomware attacks, massive identity theft operations, and even cyber warfare. The level of sophistication has just exploded. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. Let's look at a really powerful real-world example. Back in 2021, Ireland's Health Service Executive, the HSE, suffered what was called the most significant attack on an Irish state agency. This timeline really shows you how those long detection times can happen. The whole thing started with just one infected workstation way back on March 18th. The attackers then just lay dormant, moving silently through the network for nearly 2 months before they finally executed their ransomware attack on May 14th, which shut down critical health systems across the entire country. All right, so we get the threat, it's real, it's serious. Now what? How do we actually build the fortress to defend against it? Let's shift gears from the problem to the solution and start architecting our defensive strategy. The core philosophy here is a concept called defense in depth. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a medieval castle, right? You don't just have one big wall. You've got a moat, then an outer wall, then an inner wall, and you've got guards at every single gate. If one layer gets breached, the attacker still has a whole bunch of other obstacles to get through. So, this right here, this is basically the blueprint for our digital fortress. You can see all the layers. Starting with physical security on the absolute outside, we're talking fences and guards. As we move inward, we pass through the network perimeter, then the internal systems, the applications, until we finally reach the very center. The treasure we're protecting, the data itself. Okay, let's start decoding these layers. What are the actual tools we're using to build this thing? We're about to meet the bouncers, the walls, and the guards of our modern digital defense. Our very first line of defense is the Access Control List, or ACL. And I love this analogy. Think of it as the bouncer at a club. It stands right at the door with a super strict guest list, deciding which traffic is even allowed to approach, all based on where it's from and where it wants to go. All right, next up, we've got the actual walls of our fortress, firewalls. This shows a zone-based firewall, which is pretty clever because it creates different security areas. You've got your trusted private zone for all your internal systems, the untrusted public zone for the wide-open internet, and then this buffer zone in between called the DMZ, or Demilitarized Zone, for public-facing servers. Now, let's talk about the guards. We have two main types, an intrusion detection system, or IDS, and an intrusion prevention system, or IPS. And the difference between them is absolutely crucial. An IDS is like a lookout and a watchtower. It sees a threat and yells, "Hey, something's wrong." An IPS is more like a guard right at the gate. It not only sees the threat, but it actively steps in to block it. This visual just makes that difference so clear. Look on the left. The IDS sits off to the side, watching a copy of the traffic. So it can alert you to a threat, sure, but it can't stop the original attack. Now look on the right. The IPS sits directly in the path of the traffic. It inspects every single packet and can actively block a threat before it ever even reaches its destination. And this table just lays it all out, nice and simple. Placement, out of band for IDS, inline for IPS. The action, passive alerts for the IDS, active blocking for the IPS. You see, the goal of one is detection and alerting. The goal of the other is detection and prevention. It's really the difference between being reactive and being proactive. And that brings us to our final section. Because building the fortress isn't a one-time job, oh no. The siege is never ending. This battle between attackers and defenders, it's a perpetual arms race, and that frontier is always moving. This diagram is a perfect example of just how clever modern attackers can be. As networks upgrade to new technologies like IPv6, attackers can actually exploit weaknesses in the old infrastructure. So here, you see an attacker using the older IPv4 protocol to sneak through a firewall and attack the newer, maybe less protected systems on the inside. It's pretty sneaky. But here's the thing. Just as the attacks get smarter, so do our defenses. We're now using AI and machine learning to automatically spot new threats. Our defenses are moving into the cloud, becoming way more flexible and scalable. And next-gen systems can do what's called deep packet inspection, looking not just at where traffic is going, but what's actually inside of it. So I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We're building these incredibly smart AI-driven defenses to protect our digital gold. But in this never-ending arms race, the real question is, are the attackers just going to use that same AI to get even smarter too?